Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. Here we're going to talk about Spine 260, Eyes Without a Face, directed by Georges Franju, 1960. The story itself is about a doctor who wants to repair his daughter's highly damaged face. And there's only one time that you actually see this, but a lot of times it's just hidden. Most of the times you do see her face, she has to wear this mask. But he wants to repair her face, and the way he does it is through an attempt at a heterograph operation, just taking out the face of one and putting it onto another. Which means that he ends up kidnapping women in order to do this. And this is so it's a fairly straightforward horror with some elements of mystery and suspense. I mean, it's really that kind of straightforward. Franju doesn't call it horror. He doesn't like that, but I think it's appropriate. But it's the kind of horror that's more akin to Frankenstein and Dracula from the novels, not so much the films. This isn't really about necessarily gore or anything really diabolical. It's just things that are kind of twisted, and it's more of a it's evil is thought to be the perversion of good, and that's really what it is. It's nothing terribly grotesque. And I think that's what gives it a certain charm to it. Usually what puts people off with horror films, and I would say that I'm kind of in this camp, is that sometimes there's this desire to want to overdo it, to overdo the horror elements, to make things more bloody, more gory, more nasty, and where there's slime and muck and mudge that just sort of drips everywhere, and visceral can be good. I mean, I've talked a lot about Videodrome as a really good example of a visceral film where you just watch it and it just kind of gets under your skin. But sometimes it can be overdone, and sometimes, actually more often than not, it can be executed in a very stupid way, where you feel like it's not there. It doesn't really have a point to it, other than just to scare you or to gross you out. And I think that the best horror films are the ones that there is something a little bit more to it. It's not just for the scares. And actually what makes this horror film really interesting, and I was trying to think of a way to really sum up my thoughts on this, but what I like about, what makes this interesting is that it's a horror film that's not overtly a horror film. Again, Georges Franju, who by the way was one of the co-founders of Cinémathèque Française, along with Henri Langlois, he doesn't think of it as a horror film, and so it has the elements, but it's not done in an overt way. And part of it was because its producer Jules Bourcon wanted to have this film work for European censors, and it's a very amusing little anecdote. He warns Franju that the film shouldn't contain a lot of blood because that will set off the French censors. There shouldn't be a lot of animals tortured because that's going to set off the English censors, and there shouldn't be a mad scientist because that's going to upset the German censors. Now, the story that was used as the basis, I forget exactly who wrote the novel, but the story has all of those elements in it. And then the question is like, how can we make this work? And actually, how they were able to do this, Pierre Belot and Boileau, and Thomas Nargiac were involved in the adaptations. They most famously worked with Henri-Georges Clouzot for Diabolique, and later Alfred Hitchcock for Vertigo. When they adapted this, they shifted the focus of the story. It no longer became the novel focused more on the doctor, but they shifted it to the daughter instead. And it's because of this shift that it did a lot of the things that Bourcon wanted to avoid. There wasn't as much blood, there wasn't as much animal torture, and even then it's all very mild, and the doctor doesn't come off as a pure mad scientist. It gave it the right tone, and I think that's what makes it really. I do see this as a romantic gothic horror story. It's the scientist that wants to do the right thing, but in so doing, he ends up. But no matter what his good intentions were, he ends up using these sort of diabolical means. You know, he kidnaps women, he takes their faces, and it ends up not working. So he keeps doing it to try to help his daughter. His daughter is frustrated by all this and hates the seclusion of it, and I think in a certain extent feels something for the victims of this procedure, and it just absolutely has it with him. But also, interestingly enough, the doctor doesn't come off as totally a bastard anyways, which leads into another aspect of the production history. This film was shown in the United States, and it was shown as a double feature with another horror film that was made, and it was actually made in Japan, called The Manster. So right away we're getting into B-film territory, and this is actually a case where it's unfairly called a B-film. I would not call this a B-film at all. It was done with high craftsmanship. There was a lot of attention and care. This was not just a quick put it out cheap production. There was some care to it. So I don't call this a B film by any stretch. But unfortunately, the way it was initially promoted in the United States, it was a B movie. For starters, it gets paired off with the Manster, and then second, it's cut slightly, it's redubbed, and then given the title The Horror Chamber of Dr. Faustus, which doesn't make any sense at all because the doctor is not, there's nobody named Faustus at all. And it's made out to be something that really, it really wasn't. And interestingly, one of the cuts that was done to the film, there's a minor scene where the doctor is working with a child who has, I believe, has epilepsy. Or no, it's not epilepsy. Dyslexia. There we go. I'm just trying to remember exactly what it was. It's never explicitly stated, but I think it's inferred that he has like some form of dyslexia, and the way that normally he comes off as very cold and calculated and logical. Anyway, there's hardly any emotion, except he does go into outbursts when he's in the confines of his home, but much of the time, like we see when he's in public, he's very logical, very calculated, very, very cold. But this is one of those moments where there is some semblance of warmth, and you do feel like he really does care, and mainly because I think this comes through especially because he's not out kidnapping women. Actually, he has a lackey do it for him, and a nice little twist on the whole having the hunchback accomplice. Instead it's Valley wearing a pearl necklace as kind of a choker. It looks like it's it looks like it's a choker. But at any rate, so so this is a point where he doesn't do this, and he actually comes off as a decent guy. But that was cut in the initial American release, and it was again ironically it was to try to make him to be this through and through mad scientist. So like, yeah, the Germans would have been upset with the mad scientist, but the Americans live for this stuff. What does that say about Americans? But then eventually it did get re-released, and actually when it first came out, I think in America there was sort of an indifference, and I think because of that, it was given that double bill, and it was thought of as, oh, it's just a B movie fare. But then its reputation got better, especially when the original version was shown, and it was like, oh, okay, this actually works. And you know, you don't have to redub a film. You know, it's okay to watch a film with subtitles. It's not a bad thing. And it has a certain charm and atmosphere, and that's what I really like about it. It's a romantic Gothic story, again, like Frankenstein and Dracula, but set more contemporary. It's a contemporary setting, so it's all those elements, but done in a modern and contemporary way, and it does have that charm to it. So I would say that if you like horror films, and even if you don't like horror films, because it is a different tone. It's not this overt scare. It's not. I mean, even the whole blood thing. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of blood. It is kind of when you do see the heterocrap, the actual face taken out. It is kind of ugh. But it's there, and that's it. It's not like it's done in your face, and it's done in a very effective way. And again, practical on-set special effects, something that's missing nowadays. I mean, if this were to be remade, and oh fuck, that's going to be bad. Trying to remake this film. Actually, the funny thing is that it's sort of more relevant to remake this film than it is to remake Videodrome, especially given this is the part that I really find amusing. Right around the time when I first saw this and got into it, this came out on DVD in 2004, and so 2004 2005. It was right around the time when there were actual face transplants done in, of all places, France. So here we get life imitating art. So there you go. 45 years later, and there was no kidnapping involved. There's no kidnapping and murder involved in order to get it. So it was all voluntarily done. It was all done in public. But I just found that kind of interesting. This is kind of interesting. So there you go. But so yeah, this would be, so actually, having said that, I probably don't think that this shouldn't be a film that should be remade at all, because now face transplants are more or less a given, and it can be done, and it doesn't involve having to do anything illegal to get there. Now I guess you could probably, I don't want to encourage it. There's way too many remakes. I mean, come up with something original. Come on. Like, stop. Yes, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Yes, we owe something to the past, but it's all for the sake of building. Let's add something to it. Let's take these things and kind of run with it, not rehash it. I mean, it always feels like it's just recycling, and it's recycling in the bad sense, and I don't care if it's good for the environment. Recycling ideas is, you can only take it so far, and then it all just falls apart, and it's not really interesting. So really, come up with original ideas. End digression rant. But yeah, Eyes Without a Face. I would definitely recommend it for. I mean, I think certainly if you're a fan of horror, you will like it. But I would also say that if you don't like horror, I would recommend it, because the tone is is not overtly horror. It's not just constant horror elements. I mean, there's the tone of it is it's, and you would think that with the dilution it would make it weaker, but actually I think it makes it a little bit more interesting. I mean, it's like with cake. You know, there is such a thing as rich cake where you can almost, it almost feels like you're biting into the sugar bits, and you could feel the blood sugar just bubbling, and you're just gonna start turning hyper. And sometimes on occasion that's fine, but other times you just want, I just want a straightforward cake, no heaviness on the cake, no heaviness on the icing. Just have it be a little bit simple. Just it doesn't have to be this big overbearing thing. Sometimes you want that, and if you can do it in such a way that it's still flavorful, and that's why I think that's the point of it, is that it's still flavorful. The horror elements are not in your face, but there's still enough flavor and intrigue to grab you, to keep your interest, to draw you into the story and the atmosphere and everything, and that's what I think really makes it work. Certainly as a horror film, but I think even just as a film in general. So yes, definitely recommend it. It's also a very good Halloween viewing as well. If you want to watch films on Halloween and you don't want to go to the theaters for it, I would say include that in your viewing. There's plenty of good films to see on Halloween, but this is, I would say that this is one of them. So, and I guess my last little bit of trivia is, if you've ever heard that there was a Billy Idol song called Eyes Without a Face, yes, it's because of this film. And to be honest, that's actually my favorite of the popular Billy Idol songs. And yes, this proves that I am truly a child born in the 80s to know about Billy Idol. But yeah, actually I like that song, so so at any rate, yeah. Eyes Without a Face. And until next time, take care.